Let me show you an example of what not to do. We're going to write a trigger that does an infinite loop since the developer mixed up their usage of before and after. Fair warning, this trigger will have great syntax, but horrible logic. Do not code like this. So here I am, purposely writing a bad trigger to show you what happens if you mix up your befores and afters. The trigger that we're writing simply changes an opportunity's amount field to 1000 every time an opportunity is updated. Note 3 things about this trigger. First, it is an after trigger. We said earlier that the main reason you'll use an after trigger is if you need a record's ID after it is inserted. But we never use the record's ID in this trigger, and this trigger doesn't even run on insert. It only runs on update. This would have been a clear candidate to use a before trigger. The second thing to notice is that we explicitly save our work. This is because nothing is automatically saved in after triggers since they run after the save milestone has finished. Finally, note that no errors were detected when this trigger saved. Just because no errors show up doesn't mean that your trigger isn't broken. Let's now see what happens when we update an opportunity and this trigger is executed. Here we're navigating to an existing opportunity and updating a field on it so our trigger fires. Immediately after we attempt to save, we see that Salesforce gives us a huge error message. A close look at the message reveals why Salesforce gave us an error. This record is read-only. Okay, so I was being a little dramatic about the whole infinite loop thing. We did not trigger an infinite loop here. But if Salesforce didn't force these records to be read-only and we could edit them, we would have definitely triggered an infinite loop. Good job, Salesforce, for proactively preventing us from screwing things up. Now play along with me here and pretend Salesforce didn't give us the read-only error. Why would this trigger loop infinitely? I want to go through this scenario to give you an understanding of why these records should be read-only and how Salesforce processes after triggers. Plus, infinite loops are awesome. We're bringing back our trusty database event timeline to highlight how Salesforce processes these events. First, an opportunity is updated somewhere, which kicks off our database event timeline. All before triggers are run. Then records in trigger.new get saved and system fields are updated. Now our after trigger starts to execute. Our trigger loop begins. We update the opportunity amount field. And finally, we explicitly save our work, which kicks off a brand new database event timeline. Before triggers are run, the save event happens. Then our trigger kicks itself off once again since all after triggers are now run. This cycle viciously repeats itself, and Salesforce proactively guards against this by giving you the read-only error that we saw earlier. Now that you know how we broke this trigger, let's talk about how we'd fix it. First, of course, we'll change this to a before trigger. We never use any system level fields such as the opportunity's ID in this trigger, so there is no point using an after trigger in the first place. Then, we're going to remove the line of code that explicitly saves our work. This isn't needed in before triggers since the upcoming record save milestone will take care of it. Once we make the changes, let's go back in Salesforce, try our update again, and see what happens. Voila! This time, our trigger successfully updated the opportunity amount field to 1000.